For today's activity, you're going to need your markers, your pencil, and your Ohlone notebook. Today we're going to be talking about the Ohlone people and learning about where they lived and the types of food that they ate. So I'm going to go ahead and go to page 3. Last week I did this map, page 1. We'll leave page 2 blank for now since there's marker on the back. And we'll go ahead and move on to page 3. Here's page 3. And I'm going to write these things down on my notes, and I expect that you also do the same in your notebook. I'm going to title this page called Ohlone Facts. Okay, Ohlone Facts. And since both of those words are capitalized, I'm going to go ahead and underline them. All right. I do have limited space, so I'm not going to write enormous. I'm going to try to keep my writing short and sweet so that I don't take up too much space on my paper. You can use the back of page 3 if you need to, on page 4 if needed, and I might do the same. Okay, so one more time, just to review from last week, and I'm going to draw this, and hopefully you will too. We have our state of California, and I'm going to quickly draw the whole state. So we have that sort of box right at the top. We have this bay, and then it kind of goes over and meets together. There's our state, all right, and I'll label that California. And we are, of course, talking about this, whoops, my pencil broke. We are, of course, talking about this region right here, all right, and we're talking about the Ohlone people who lived in that region. Ohlone is spelled O-H-L-O-N-E. Okay, so the Ohlone people, and because I'm taking notes, I'm going to be using something called bullet points, which means I'm not going to be writing in complete sentences. I'm just going to write down the most important words, and you should write down what I have so that we all have the same information. We feel really good about that, okay? So the first thing I'd like you to know about the Ohlone people, and there's my little bullet point, is that they lived 350 to 2,000 years ago. Okay, that's not to say that there aren't still Ohlone people alive. There sure are, but we're talking in large scale and massive scale. They lived, the last time they really lived together as a community, a large community, was about 350 to 2,000 years ago. The language that they speak is called Penutian. Okay, so they spoke a language called Penutian. Penutian is spelled like this. Okay, they did not speak English. Remember, English wasn't brought over till much later. This was their original language. Even though they lived 350 to 2,000 years ago, they lived in small groups. They didn't live in big old cities like we did. They lived in something called a tribe. And each tribe was 30 to 150 people. They didn't live in larger cities because the environment couldn't support that. So each tribe had between 30 to 150 people. That was probably several families to larger families. And they didn't just stay put, okay? They didn't just stay put in one spot. They moved with the seasons, okay? They moved with the seasons. But not only that, they might have moved when animals were migrating and such, but they also had to live near a water source, okay? And lived near a water source. Okay, you can't survive without water. They were pretty good at hunting and gathering, but water, fresh water is tricky, so they had to live near a water source. Not necessarily salt water, it had to be fresh water. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about their homes. All right, so I'm gonna write the word homes, and I'm gonna put that in a box just to demarcate that we're talking about something a little bit different because they had a few types of houses, so it's important to note all of them. So the first type of home that the Ohlone lived in is called a wiggy-up. Wig-e-up, E-up. But some Ohlone folks call them wigwams. So we're going to put a slash here so we can know both words. Wiggy-ups are wigwams, okay? Well, I'm going to put a colon here because we're going to now describe what those wiggy-ups look like. All right, first of all, and I'm going to scoot over because I'm going to leave a little space here. Make a little box here for myself. I'm going to draw a wiggy-up in just a moment, but I want to make sure I get my notes done. Okay, first of all, wiggy-ups were made from willow poles, okay, from willow trees, and tule, right? We've talked about that. They dried that tule, okay? All wiggy-ups had a hole in the top to release smoke, right? If you don't let your smoke out, you're going to get lots of smoke and unclean air in your home. Think about it like a chimney, okay? You got to let that smoke out. So there was always a hole in the top to let the smoke out, all right? But they lived in the same areas that we do, right? It rains in the winter. So in the winter, all right, they maybe stored their wiggy up. They took it apart. They took the willow poles down and the tule down, and they lived in caves. They'd move inside to caves where it was more waterproof. So they lived in caves. Or if they couldn't find a cave nearby, they would also just take mud and cover the wiggy up. They'd cover the tule with mud to make it more watertight. Okay, so, or they covered the wiggy up in mud. All right, well, let's quickly draw what a wiggy up might look like. So I'm going to take two colors. I'm going to take green and brown. All right, I'm going to take, oops, not pink, green and brown. There we go. All right, and so first I'm going to start with that little hole at the top. Okay, there's that hole at the top. And then I'm going to draw these kind of curved willow poles. That's the frame, okay? And then all wiggy ups had to have some sort of door, right? You have to be able to get in. So they had some sort of hole where you could get in, all right? And then, of course, remember the smoke would come out of the top, right? And then all the rest of it was covered in tule grass. This. And so they had a nice breezy home made out of materials that are in their area. Remember, they're not going to be building with redwood trees because they don't live in the redwood forest. They have to build their home out of things that are nearby. So they have tule grass and willow trees, and that's what they decided to use. Okay, so most wiggy ups could fit one family, but they also did have a larger wiggy up. I'm just going to scoot this up a little bit here. All right, so I'm going to add another bullet point here. They had a large wiggy up. Oops, not wiggy-yum. Good thing I have an eraser. A large wiggy up. Okay, and what did they use that for? A large wiggy up was used for meetings. Maybe if they wanted to gather the entire tribe, talk about where they were going to be moving to, or an issue, or have a holiday or a special occasion, they had a larger wiggy up to share the space with the whole tribe. Think of it like a multi-purpose room. All right, but they had one more type of home or shelter, and it was called a sweat house. So I'm going to add another little bullet point here, and I'm going to call this the sweat house. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing like I did with the wiggy up. I'm going to draw a little sort of pocket here where I'll have space to draw that sweat house in a second. Okay, so what's a sweat house? Well, a sweat house is in the same shape as that wiggy up, all right, but it's covered with mud. It was totally covered with mud. So it wasn't ever green or yellow. Okay, it was covered with mud, and also it was built partly underground. Okay, so not a cave. A cave is rocks, right? But this was built partly underground, so they dug it down a bit. And they burned fires inside, hot fires. So big fires. Fires burned inside. All right. And they would make the sweat house really hot inside, and only men were allowed inside. And they would sweat and try to get all their, this sounds kind of strange, but try to get all their stink off them before they hunted. Ladies, we were not allowed in the sweat house. Okay, so it was only men visited to be cleansed, to get clean. And sometimes they went in there to be cleansed spiritually. They would pray, they would chant, they would sing songs, and they would reach out to the spirits and the gods that they believed in. Okay, but it was only men. All right, so it was only men. Now, here is what a sweat house looks like. Okay, same shape as a wiggy up. But brown. So I'm going to take my brown marker here, and I'm going to sort of draw that same shape that we had for the wiggy up. Okay. With like a little bit of a curved bottom here. Remember, it's partly underground, so this would be maybe part of the dirt or the earth. It's partly underground. It did have a hole at the top, even though they wanted it hot. You can't go in an area that is full of smoke. You'll get very sick. And they still had those willow poles, right? But the tule grass was covered with mud. All right, well, oops, I realized I forgot to make the door here. Here's the door. And inside of there was a big fire. So I'm actually going to take my orange and I'm going to draw some flames. Okay, not because it was on fire, it was just fire inside. All right, there was fire inside. And then they covered this with mud so that it would stay kind of insulated and hot so the men could go in and sweat off their human smell or enjoy some time with other men and cleanse spiritually. So we can say that this is an area that females were not allowed. Women had other duties to deal with. Okay, so those are the 3 types of homes that the Ohlones had. I'm going to go ahead and pause there for now, and we'll pick up the rest of this next week.